On behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Spokane area and Spokane City Cable 5, welcome to our 2019 primary election candidate forum featuring the candidates for Spokane City Council President. I'm Ann Murphy, your moderator, and Sally Phillips of the League is our timer. Election day for the 2019 primary is Tuesday, August 6, 2019. This is a top two primary in which the two highest vote getters will advance to the general election in November. In this forum, the candidates will have an opportunity to present themselves and their ideas to the voters, and you, the voter, will have an opportunity to learn more about each candidate, helping you all make informed decisions when marking your ballots. The questions I will be asking the candidates have been formulated by the League's Voter Service Committee. Candidates are seated in alphabetical order, and the first speaker will rotate with each question. Candidates will have up to 1 minute to answer the initial question and up to 90 seconds to answer subsequent questions, with additional time for rebuttal or follow-up as seems appropriate. And each candidate will have the opportunity for a 1-minute closing statement. I will ask as many questions as time allows. Our timer will hold up a yellow card when the speaker has 15 seconds remaining and a red card to indicate time is up. Now, before we proceed with our candidates, a reminder about voting in the primary. You must be registered in order to vote. You can register online by July 29th, up to 8 days prior to the election day. Any mail-in or paper forms must be received in the elections office by July 29th. And new this year, which is effective June 30, is same-day voter registration. During the 8 days prior to Election Day, there will be 2 places where you can register in person, and those places are the Spokane County Elections Office, 1033 West Gardner Avenue, or Center Place, 2426 North Discovery Place in Spokane Valley. Hours at those sites are Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m., and then on Election Day, they will be open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. When you register, you will be provided a ballot for voting. Other registration changes effective this summer are automatic voter registration, where eligible citizens interact with state agencies, and there will be pre-registration for 16, 17-year-olds. Registered voters will receive their mail-in ballots about 3 weeks prior to Election Day. Ballots must be postmarked or deposited in the conveniently located ballot boxes throughout our county, and those must be in no later than 8 p.m. on Election Day. Ballots can also be dropped off at the voter service centers. For locations of ballot boxes and voter service centers and information about accessible voting units or other questions about casting your ballot, contact the Spokane County Elections Office at www.spokanecounty.org/elections. Contact information for the candidates as well as a voter service guide can also be found on the website of Spokane County Elections Office. Additional information about the candidates can be found on the League of Women Voters online voter guide.411.org. And now we will meet the candidates for president of the City Council of Spokane. This is a nonpartisan race, and all voters within the city of Spokane will select 2 of these candidates to advance to the general election. Joining us today are Breean, Mike Fagan, Phillip Tyler, and Cindy Wendle. Candidates, you will have up to 1 minute to answer our first question, and we'll begin with Mr. Beggs. Why are you running for council president, and what makes you the best candidate? 1 minute.
So my grandmother helped raise me and my brother, and she lived 107 years, and most of those years she used her God-given gifts to serve people around her in the community. And when she'd put us to bed at night, she would always tell us, to whom much is given, much is required. And that's our family ethic, and that's my ethic. And that's why I'm running for city council president. At this moment, Spokane is in play, and the choices we make as a community are going to impact us for generations. I'm the best candidate because I've proven for decades now that I get things done for people. I don't just wish for different outcomes, I bring people together to create them. And after my years on the city council, I have the relationships and the knowledge to get things done. And when the city of Spokane needs someone to bring people together, they call me, and I get it done. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fagan.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, I have had the honor and the privilege of serving you, and some of you, I've actually come to your homes and your businesses to take care of and answer questions with regard to your frustrations, the quality of life, and how things going on around you are impacting you. I'd like for you folks to give me an opportunity to continue on for the next 4 years as your city council president. Why? It's because for the next 4 years, ladies and gentlemen, experience is going to count. You need to be able to rely on somebody who knows the city budget, who's already fostered and established those relationships that we are going to need in order to address some very severe public safety and homeless issues that we've got facing us now. I thank you very much for your confidence in the past, and I thank you very much for your confidence in the vote and your vote in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Tyler.
Thank you. First of all, this seat feels real good. It's like it's a perfect fit. I'm running because the council presidency needs a change in its residency. I'm running because true representation matters. We don't all aspire to be LeBron or Kanye. I'm running because the only way we can change the practices and the policies that have served to create divisiveness among our citizens, our businesses, and our law enforcement brothers and sisters is to change those who are crafting them. I'm running because, like you, I am part of the exhausted majority who has grown weary of the political oscillation of our current council. We need productive equilibrium. I'm running because I have a proven record of reaching across the aisle and building relationships and building bridges in the city, in the community, in the county, in the state. And relationships are very important when you're passing legislation. And I'm running because you matter, Spokane, and you deserve an elected official that can return and recover the notion of politics of the people, for the people, and by the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wendle.
Thank you, Ann, and the League of Women Voters for organizing this today, and I want to thank my fellow candidates for being here. My name is Cindy Wendle, and I'm running for council president because I'm tired of political agendas dominating city government. We've knocked over on hundreds of doors, and our team continues to hear the same three things that pop up. They continue to see too many people sleeping on streets, in our parks, and our sidewalks when they should be in homes and apartments, and their hearts are breaking. They say that our roads are still crumbling, that they're not fixed, their cars are getting damaged, and I even had one say that, hey, I've worked on city buses and they're getting damaged too. And we need to address our open drug use. It's scary. And it's so scary that I have moms telling me that they don't want to take their kids downtown and they don't want to go through the park. The reason I'm running and the reason I'm the best candidate for this job is bringing a fresh perspective to this council. And I believe that we can fix our problems and set political agendas aside. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to just expand on this. Some of you touched on it, some of you didn't. So I want you to talk more about how do you envision the role of the city council president and explain how you might do things differently should you be elected to this position. And we'll start with you, Mr. Fagan. This will be a 90-second response time.
You bet, and thank you once again. At the district level, ladies and gentlemen, you are basically 110% responsible for the constituents within your council district. As the council president, you're going to be in a position to have to flip-flop your shoes and go from a servant leader mode to a leader servant mode. A position that is now going to require that individual to hover at about the 25 to 30,000 foot level, as well as the sub 5,000 foot level. Because it's not just about the council district anymore. It's about the city as a whole and how what we do in the city impacts the region. Now, that being said, we do have some things that have been kept on the wayside. For instance, the north-south corridor. Is anybody in the city actually looking at the change in the traffic patterns that we're going to foresee? How is that going to impact the future of road maintenance and stuff like this? A couple of other things. that have been weighing heavy off to the side, and we need to sit down and have real conversations about. We haven't had a police contract since 2016. That is a major issue to me. Secondly, we've been talking about and wrestling with the thought of, do we build a new jail? Do we build a hybrid, corrections facility, et cetera? Council President is going to have to put themselves in a position to start leading those kinds of conversations, because until we get past those issues that we have not addressed thoroughly, we are not going to be able to adequately address our public safety issues, our drug use, nor the homeless issue.
Thank you. Mr. Tyler.
Yes, ma'am. I see the role as council president as leading a group of elected officials to come together in a manner that most effectively represents the entire community. I see him or her setting the decorum in city council hearings. And what we have seen as citizens is a chilling effect in our city council meetings, where our citizens are berated from the dais versus celebrated from the dais. I see his or her role as being analyzing the community needs, looking at alternatives and the resources to get those things done. I see him or her understanding their role and ensuring there is no mission creep, as we've seen in our current council. And where there are opportunities where roles are not defined or laws may come in conflict, compromise must be in order for a council president. And they must be flexible enough to meet the needs of their constituents. I see they must work within their budget. They must constantly evaluate their priorities because they continue to change in Spokane. And I think they have to develop relationships and respect the institutional knowledge, the historical knowledge of the staff, and not be competing against them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Wendle.
Yes, the role of council president, a few years ago, it was said that the mayor's office had too much control over the city government, and that this council was not stepping up, really, and doing much of their role, that they were just kind of pawns of the mayor's office. So I think we've seen in the last few years some good come of that, where we recognize that there's a need for balance. Some ideas and the powers that be really need to step up with ideas. But the role of the council president as leader really is first and foremost to listen. It's to really understand what's going on and the concerns of the constituents. It's also to understand what questions aren't being asked. I think we've had a lot of decisions that have been made lately where we have unintended consequences with some pretty expensive issues that we have to resolve because of it. So really understanding that from the beginning, working from the ground up and not from the top down is a very important role for this president, and it's going to be imperative as our city grows that we have the council recognize the important role that they have, and a president understand that his or her role in leading from listening.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Beggs.
Yes, so first of all, the city council president's the one council member that's elected citywide, really, all districts. And I've lived in all districts, and I've been doorbelling in all districts. But I think one thing that people don't realize is that the other council members don't work for the council president, and he or she doesn't have control over them. They don't. Really, it is about being a facilitator and a coach and listening, not just to the constituents, but the other council members. One thing I'd like to see a better job of is when new council members come on is an onboarding process. And you're really working as council president with council members not to get them to do what you want to do, but to find out what their vision is, what their district sent them here to do, and help explain to them all the ins and outs of the budgets and city procedures of how to get there. I've seen so many council members frustrated. They don't know how to get from A to B, regardless of their intent. So that's council president's job, first and foremost, is keep the council working together towards their dreams and visions of constituents. And then it's really to meet with the mayor and the administration. We have a strong council, strong mayor system. And people haven't really figured out that we each have our own roles. And if one stops doing it, it doesn't work. We get along most of the time. Most of our votes are 7-0 in the council. The mayor rarely vetoes anything. We approve all the things he wants to do, usually. But it's those times when you have to stand up for what's right and for what's the law and our constituents that's really going to test the next council president. But to do it with civility and not to make it personal, just follow the data, follow the process of the city. That's what city council president's job is to do. And that's what I've done previously, and that's what I look forward to doing.
Thank you. So now that we have an idea of how you'll be a leader, want to find out a little bit more and explain more, some of you've touched on them already, your priorities for the city. What would you change or what improvements would you make for what you see as a better Spokane? And we'll do 90 seconds on this one too. So we'll start with Mr. Tyler.
Yes, thank you. So my priorities remain the same when we launched our campaign. There are 3+1 priority status. Number one, community safety. And community safety, in my opinion, is a broad reaching institute. It talks about our relations with our public servants. It talks about getting together and making a community a safer environment. Councilman Fagan touched on, it's been 907 days since our law enforcement brothers and sisters have had a contract. That's unacceptable. And I believe my unique relationship with our law enforcers would be able to help reconcile that union issue. Community safety also means an environment where our children are safe in their schools and working closely with our school resource officers so we don't have to be worried about data versus discipline. My number two is housing and homelessness. Homelessness has been a big issue in our community. Homelessness, in my opinion, we have to very first start with stop using the term criminalizing homelessness. It is the behaviors, not the beings, that are being impacted by the sit and lie ordinance. Homelessness is the behavior, it's not the cause. And addressing the issues downstream, those behaviors do nothing to affect the upstream issues that have created that situation for the individual. So I think the city must do a better job working with those institutions out there that are doing a good job currently. Institutions like Salvation Army, the Union Gospel Mission, and the Adult Teen Challenge. And then my +1, I want to get to that because I know my time is running out, is suicide and mental health. And I think that's important. It's not talked about, and I think it needs to get more attention and more funding. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Wendle.
Thank you. Again, I go back to the importance of listening. And I think when I started in the race, which was just in May, I had my ideas of what I thought was what we needed to prioritize with the city. But after listening to the people, it hasn't changed much. But I do want to stick with what are the priorities of what I'm listening and hearing. The biggest one, I think, is enforcing the law. We have laws. We need to enforce them, but not to criminalize behavior necessarily. We need to enforce our laws so we also extend treatment options to people. We need to make sure that we are taking care of all of our citizens and getting them the help they need. That we're also, and I agree with Phil here, is we have got to figure out a way to help everyone stop the behaviors and have a healthier lifestyle. But we also have to recognize there's a drug epidemic, and it is only getting worse. And we have to figure out a way as a community that we are going to provide the services to address those at the beginning and then also understand what the root causes are and what is going on. And economic prosperity for all is essential. It's making sure as we grow that we grow well, that our businesses are supported, and that we create an opportunity for everyone in our economy to have good paying jobs and better paying jobs to afford the things that they need to afford, especially housing. And we will be a safe city. Another priority is making sure that this entire city feels safe for everyone.
Thank you. Mr. Biggs.
My vision for the city is that Spokane can hold its head high and say, and everyone agree, that we are the most livable city in the Northwest. And I think it's possible. I moved here by choice. Spokane is on the move. Business investment is up, construction investment. We're spending more on our streets. We're spending more on our parks. We approve bonds for our schools, for our libraries. We are on the move, and we are at a place that Spokane hasn't been at in 100 years. And that's a credit to the people in the city government right now. But there's also problems that are holding us back. And the thousands of doors that we've been to since this campaign started and since I ran a couple of years ago for council, it comes down to safety. People want to be safe in their neighborhoods. They want to be safe in their homes, in their cars, on the streets. And we're making progress. Crime is down. But we dug a big hole decades ago on investing in our people and our roads, and we're filling that in now. We got to keep that momentum going. And the first thing I learned being on council 3 years ago was that as much as I wish everything would get done in the next 6 months or the next year, it takes a while. We don't have all those resources. We have added so many police officers, and we got a vote for 20 more. So crime is going down based on what we did 18 months ago, and it'll keep going down. But everyone who wants it better, that's the vision we need, and we all have to come together. And it's not going to be just for the few. You know, I started my work at Rogers High School back in the 1980s. Now I'm a downtown business owner. Spokane has to work for everybody, and if there's any danger, that's what it is. It'll only be for a few. I've spent my whole career helping everybody, and that's what I want to bring to Spokane, the most livable city in the Northwest for everybody.
Thank you. Mr. Fagan.
Thank you. Well, I can tell you all of the rest of the candidates basically nailed your top two priorities. So to further elaborate, I believe that it is high time that we quit sugarcoating what is going on and we sit down and have the very difficult discussions that we need to have. I'll give you a good for instance. The drug addiction episode. People are hooked on meth, heroin, cocaine. We don't grow the cocaine, the coca plants, we don't grow the poppies in the United States, therefore we do not produce it here. It comes from somewhere. 70% of those illegal drugs comes across the southern border. Now, would we see a correlation in a decrease of availability of street drugs if we were to take care of business on our borders? I would tend to think so. But that's just one of many hard discussions that we need to be having. I would be a council president that would advocate to allow our federal authorities to act in accordance with current federal law and policy at our point of entries. The drug addiction issue is, in my mind, one of the biggest public safety issues that we have got in Spokane, the region, and across the United States. It's time to quit sugarcoating. We've got to have some very difficult decisions and discussions as we move forward. Again, at the end of the day, folks, if the perception is you don't feel safe taking your kids downtown to a park or anywhere else for that matter, then we have a problem and it needs to be addressed.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on into a safety-related question here. Recently, the Spokane City Council declined to sign a non-disclosure agreement that would have allowed them to access the body camera footage of an arrest prior to the completion of an ongoing internal affairs investigation into the matter. What is the best way to ensure public oversight of the police in a timely manner while also ensuring that officers who are subject to an internal affairs investigation are not tried in the press before the investigation is completed? I think that needs 90 seconds. So.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Ms. Wendle, you begin.
Thank you, Ann. This has become a very apparent issue when we've had some body camera footage that is wanting to be viewed by many people, and we realize there probably are things in there that need to be addressed. I think the biggest issue that struck me was that we have a process in place for that. And I believe there are some current council members that have worked years ago to create the Office of the Police Ombudsman. And I read through that ordinance precisely to learn a little bit more about this issue and how it's affecting why the council wouldn't sign that non-disclosure agreement. There's really no mention at all in that ordinance about the city council's role with the Office of the Police Ombudsman. That was created as a completely independent and transparent way for the citizens to know and have trust in what the police work and what the police are doing and how they're doing it. And we need to respect that process. I believe what's happened is the citizens don't know the process and how they will voice their concern when something happens. We need to make that more transparent and educate on that process more. But we need to trust also in the process because we have to respect the police officer's role, the chief's role. City council needs to wait and follow the ordinances that was written so things work the way they should and we get to the result that we want to.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Biggs.
So the Office of Police Ombudsman was a response to Otto Zem's death in 2006. In 2007, myself and the league actually and some other groups, we put on community forums and say, how can we fix this? What machine can we put in place? And an independent civilian oversight was what we came up with. And the key was it was going to be independent. The second thing, it was not going to be about discipline. It's not a second bite at the apple to discipline anyone. It's just to spread sunlight on it so we can get recommendations. But the whole key is that the Ombudsman's office gets complete access and is completely independent. And when the law was put in place, there was an existing police contract, so we did not get full independence at the time. We had to take what we could get at the time. And we have never quite recovered from that, even though I then subsequently led a citizen initiative to put it on the ballot, and it's in our charter. It's got to be independent. The current contract doesn't do that yet, so that is a big challenge. In this specific instance, the ombudsman did not get notified of the investigation and the complaint. So that was the problem, that it didn't go through the right process. There's a gap there. And the second thing is the ombudsman is still not allowed to write his or her independent findings after all the discipline is done. So we are still in negotiations with the police union to try to change that. Council doesn't have a role in those negotiations, so it's really in the mayor's office. But I am holding to the fact that we are eventually going to get the will of the voters, independent civilian oversight, so that we can continuously improve the police department as we have done since 2008 when we put this in place.
Thank you. Mr. Fagan.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I wholeheartedly agree with Councilmember Begg's assertions and assessment of what's been going on. But just know, ladies and gentlemen, behind the scenes, with regard to this contract negotiation we've got ongoing with the Spokane Police Department, when we were notified as a council that there was a video out there, all of the council members were more than willing to sit down and review the video in an executive session. In executive session, under the power of law, the weight of law, council members are not allowed to be discussing in public things that are being put out there. Unfortunately, though, because of a union influence during the presentation of the offer, council members felt very, very uncomfortable because, again, under the weight of law, we were sequestered already. With regard to transparency of the Spokane Police Department, I also respect the fact that we may or may not have an ongoing investigation, and only until such time that that investigation is done, now we're looking at shining a very bright light on everything that has occurred up until this particular point. Believe me, that particular video kind of caught the vast majority of us council members off guard. We had no idea, no understanding, but just know at the end of the day, under the weight of law, we should have and could have viewed that video, but because of an outside influence, it was not happening.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Tyler.
Thank you so much. So when the Proposition 1, the Ombudsman Proposition, was passed in 2013, changing and amending our charter, they sought to look at hiring first an interim, then a permanent ombudsman. And the city reached out to Phillip Tyler to be on that committee, that search committee, and that hiring committee. And I was on that committee, and I was the chair of the committee when we interviewed Bart Logue, both for the interim and for the permanent position. So I know Bart Logue, I know his family. I also know Chief Meidel and his family. And I think they're both good gentlemen, honorable gentlemen. With regards to the independent oversight, clearly their mission is to certify the investigations from Spokane Police Department. He's to ensure that they're timely, fair, and thorough. When we first started tracking the data back in 2011, those 4 years, 2012, 2013, 2014, the average complaints were 108 from citizens. In the next 4 years, 2015 through 2018, the average is 46. The oversight is working. What's not working is a council or a council president that's willing to try this matter in the court of public opinion. That's when you create division. That's why it's so important that we have a council president that is not willing to do that before the facts and the information come in. It sends a chilling message to our law enforcement members that are trying to do our job. It sends a chilling message to the citizens that are trying to make their complaints, and sometimes we want to remain anonymous. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll go to another topic that you all have touched on, and that is dealing with our affordable and accessible housing. What can you, as a council president, do to help lead the efforts to create more affordable and accessible housing, especially with regard to infill and zoning decisions and other things that the city can help with? We'll start with you, Mr. Beggs.
So I would continue some of the work that we've been doing over the last few years since I've been on the council. And the number one problem right now is we do not have enough housing units. The last Great Recession, killed the building industry and ruined financing and made it so we couldn't build condos. And so we have a huge shortage. Our rental vacancy is under 1%. And so the cure for a lot of our ailments, including homelessness, is more units. And we've done two things on council that I've been involved in. One, we've changed the zoning in corridors and centers and multifamily zones so we can have more units and more diverse units, smaller ones that are more affordable, ones that are near bus lines, apartment buildings a little bit taller to just get more units really per acre in the city. And when we do that, the supply goes up, prices go down, and city services are cheaper because we're doing it where we already have roads and police and fire stations. Also, there's more people there to carry the tax burden. So that's really probably the most important thing, is to increase that density without losing neighborhood character. But it's going to take a couple years for that to come into effect because we did it over the last 18 months. But the other thing that we've done, and I've been on the subcommittee that's working on that, is expand multifamily tax exemption areas in the city where you don't have to pay taxes for 8 years if you build multifamily in the downtown and centers and corridors. We're continuing to expand that. We have another proposal coming up. So as we have more housing, it becomes more affordable at every income level, and the city's better off and has more tax revenue for services.
Thank you. Mr. Fagan.
Thank you very much. You know, incentives and whatnot are wonderful, but why not do something very novel like bring the investors, the developers, the people that build homes into City Hall to sit down with our engineers, our drafters, our analysts, and things like this. City staff are not home builders. They do not have to wade through the in my opinion, excess regulation that surrounds building. We need to get those types of folks to the table to let us know where it is in our development regulations, where it is in our incentive or disincentive packages that we need to adjust. Same thing applies to our business owners that are out there. Those folks have been in business years and years and years. They know the business and the industry inside and out. City staff doesn't. We're good at designing stuff, but we don't run a business. So what we need is we need a little bit of a change in attitude here in the city of Spokane where I get it. Downtown, the inner core, let's do infill all day long downtown. That's where we need to be concentrating. But a one-size-fits-all and striving to go infill citywide is not going to do it, and it is going to put a severe limit on housing choices, which is what we need right now for those that are at the various income thresholds that we are trying to build housing for.
Thank you. Mr. Tyler.
Thank you so much. I will agree that our vacancy is historically low. Looking at the number from the Realtors Association, we're down some 12% from 2018 in availability. But I believe we can work our way and build our way out of this situation. But we have to make sure we're including all types of housing, including market rate housing, apartments, condos, etc. This is simply not just building low-income housing. I believe in the process of filtering. I believe if you exclude market rate housing, you'll keep others from moving on, moving out, and then allowing those others to move up. I believe you also have to stop villainizing our landlords. I was raised on public housing. We had good landlords, we had bad landlords. I know landlords today who want to do a good job. But if we villainize them, if we pit them against the citizens, we won't have success in trying to build our way out of this. And lastly, I talk about the importance of workers. We're so focused on STEM education these days, we're forgetting about the trades. And they'll tell you that that's the missing piece in order to build our way out of it. There's not those skilled individuals out there that are willing to build and help us build our way out of it. So we need to focus on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wendle.
Thank you. It's definitely apparent that we all agree that we do have some challenges with our vacancy rates. And I think what you're going to find is that the way that we approach that is going to be very different. Yes, if you increase supply, you may bring prices down, but at the same time, it has to be the right type of housing. It has to be what's going to make this community better and stronger. And Phil, I agree, touched on that our landlords are a key element with this. We have so many what I call mom and pop landlords in this town that I don't think people realize the importance of what they do when they are allowing people, when they have a medical emergency, to delay their rent payment for a month or two. They work with people, and they can be so much more flexible than if we continue to, if we put more and more strict rules on being a landlord, we're going to turn over and not see as many of those in our community, and that will drastically hurt our community. The other thing that sets me apart, and Mike Fagan actually touched on, is that our city employees, we need to bring the developers in because we really don't have a whole lot of experience. It's not the job of our city employees to be out developing land. But I am the one on this council, or on this panel here today, that has experience in commercial real estate. I work with developers day in and day out. I've managed property, and I have seen the impact of what rules and regulations do to the cost of everything, not just housing. But it does filter down, and we need to pay attention to it.
Okay, thank you. So the related topic always as we talk about housing is, of course, the homeless issue that keeps coming up in our city. So last winter, we struggled to cope with and balance the needs of people who are homeless, the business owners, and other residents. What strategies would you advocate to address homelessness in Spokane? And we're going to drop to 60 seconds on these so we can get more questions in. And we'll start with you, Mr. Fagan.
Thank you. All right, first and foremost, back in 2016, Ricky's Law was passed here in Washington State, which now funds a program that would allow for the involuntary institutionalization of those that are suffering from severe mental health and drug addiction. We need to be investigating that first and foremost. Our homeless issue here in the city of Spokane, if you can imagine it, folks, looks like a four-legged stool. 3 of the legs, the city performs excellently in partnership and association with the service providers that we've got out here in our local community. Where we are having the issues right now is that antisocial, lawless contingent that we see in our faces on a daily basis downtown, along our riverbanks, and in our parks. First and foremost, I would just imagine that our police force is so demoralized because they've got double standards and 2 sets of laws that they're going to have to enforce.
Okay, we need to call time on you, sorry.
Understood.
All right, Mr.
Thank you.
Tyler.
Thank you so much. Again, I'll start by saying this. We need to stop using the verbiage of criminalizing homelessness. This is about behaviors, not about beings. I think we need to understand that setting sound policy is not occurring in a vacuum. And at times it feels like our current council is doing things like that. They're listening to the loudest voices, the loudest advocates, as opposed to those who are truly suffering from the condition of homelessness. And when we meet them one-on-one and we develop a relationship with them one-on-one, we find out what it is they truly need for their situations. Again, this is about the upstream issues, not the downstream behaviors of homelessness. And we need to do a better job of partnering with those private, nonprofit entities that are doing well, rescuing the individual from where he or she is, restoring the dignity of themselves, and then returning them with a skill set or whatever it is they need to a community where they can be productive again. This is simply not about throwing dollars at situations, as we've seen, to the tune of millions of dollars.
Thank you. Ms. Wendle.
The first and foremost thing that we have to do, and it's imperative, is understand the root causes of homelessness. And I believe that our council has started focusing more on the lack of affordable housing, and then that's pushing more and more people into our homeless population. And I disagree. And I'm actually going to pull out some information from the point in time survey that was done last January. We had 319 counted unsheltered single adults. And I've heard from a council member that the majority of the people, when asked why they were homeless, cited reasons of lack of affordable housing and a lack of income. And looking at those numbers, sure, they were high, but actually, if you compared it to the total number of 319 people, it was only 20%. There's 80% other reasons why people are on our streets, and we have got to figure that out. We have got to listen, and we need to do a better job of assessing and asking why they're there.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Biggs.
Yeah, so the cure to most homelessness is more housing. Actually, there were 1,300 people who were considered homeless. The 300 were people who weren't actually even in shelter. But if you look at the shelter and you look at the numbers, it's because they don't have money for rent. And I I went and served some meals in the crisis center, warming centers this winter, just to figure out. And I went there thinking most of the people would be high on drugs and acting out behavioral health. And that was what I went in. But as I served a meal to each person that came through, there were a few people like that, but most people were just bewildered. How did I get here? And they were younger. Some of them were working. And it's not what we see on TV. Most of the people just don't have housing. And so you have to deal with addiction and mental health issues, but you got to get housing. But the deal is with people, you have to hold them accountable for their behaviors, treat them with dignity, provide 24/7 services, hold them accountable for their behaviors, as we should hold the entire city. But the cure to homelessness is mostly more housing.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move into another arena now, and the first responder will be Mr. Tyler. Climate disruption is already having direct impacts on the Spokane area. What steps can the city take to mitigate these impacts on our community? And how could the city reduce its contribution to further climate disruption? And we'll go 90 seconds on this one.
Thank you so much. Let me start by stating this. I do not believe that climate change is the most pressing issue affecting Spokane citizens today. I think we do a good job individually about attempting to reduce our carbon footprint. I myself carpooled here today, and I hope my other candidates did as well. But let me talk about the climate change that I want to affect as council president. I want to change the climate of city government that doesn't give enough attention to our mental health and our suicide. Those two issues are affecting our young, our old, and our veterans. That's the climate I want to change. I want to change the climate in politics where we're not employing those with different abilities or our disabled citizens. That's the climate I want to change. I want to change the climate surrounding our attention and funding for sex trafficking in our city and the sexual predators that are sent to our city. That's the climate I want to change. And lastly, I want to change the climate where on a panel that has both a woman and a person of color, that this board would change and take away a population diversity and a women's issue question from the forum. Those are the climates that I want to work on as city council president.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Wendle.
Yes. I actually agree that it's a very pressing issue. What I disagree on is the role that the city takes in creating expensive policies that take resources away from what our priorities are. However, as a mom of 2 boys that have asthma, let me tell you that July and August are no fun when they are locked up in a house and are not able to go outside and play. So it's a very important issue to me. I was at a neighborhood council meeting a couple weeks ago, and we had a representative from Waste Management come and talk about how we can do a better job of recycling. And it was honestly pretty eye-opening to me how much of a poor job we do according to what the city rules are. And I think there's a lot of work to be done as a city that we can do to educate people to be more responsible and create a more sustainable environment. And we have done a great job. We recognize that our river is one of our greatest assets. I really commend people that have been in city government the last 8-10 years of working on that. And it's a gift back to our city. I want to continue that. But we also need to recognize that we do have priorities that our citizens are yearning for us to listen to and pay attention to. But we do have a significant role that we can play.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Beggs.
Yeah, so first, I just want to make it clear that climate chaos is upon us, and it is influenced by human behavior. But for a city government, these are my 3 principles that we need to adopt. 1, use science, just use science. Make all your decisions based on science and data. Second, especially for a city, be practical. Don't use something from somewhere else. Use your own agreements. What's going to work in the city? We're using natural gas in our garbage trucks. Third, you got to engage the community. Any climate solutions that we create for Spokane needs to be from Spokane, not imposed from the outside. 2 areas that I've worked hard on the Public Works Committee. 1 is water. We have a lot of space for housing on the West Plains and no water. And so we have to figure out how can we give them water. And at the same time, the Court of Appeals just struck down the rules on how much water has to go through the Spokane River. And so it's going to have to be higher. And I brought all the stakeholders together. We had a community forum right in here. We had scientists, we had community members, and we came up with a water conservation plan for the providers that we give waters to, for our city. We're saving, I think the projects we did just this year, 50 million gallons of year after year after year on water. And then if you look at energy, I sat down with Avista, and we came up with a 100% renewable energy agreement by 2030. We did that with the provider. It wasn't imposed on them. They sat down and we figured it out. And that's, I think, my skills of getting people together who don't normally do that. I think we're the only place in the state that got our utility to agree with us. That's what I will bring in those tough discussions on climate change. But at the end of the day, we most have to save money, create jobs with green jobs, and create a resilient environment.
Thank you. Mr. Fagan.
Thank you very much. Well, first and foremost, as a private individual, ladies and gentlemen, I do not buy climate disruption as being caused by human activity. Why is that? It's because the models and the basis with which the claim is being made was embellished or fraudulent. And until such time the IPCC steps up, apologizes, owns it, and provides us with good data, I'm going to have to settle on the fact that the science is not settled. Now, I had previously stated that perception is reality. Just know that we do have constituents here in the city of Spokane that do believe that human activity drives climate disruption, climate change, or global warming. What is incumbent upon the city council, the district level or the council president, is to sit down with those organizations, those individuals, and listen to them, and then work together to mitigate their fears and their concerns to their satisfaction. The city of Spokane is a net zero city. We attained that particular designation just a couple of years ago. Net zero meaning we produce more energy than we consume. We have resources here in the city of Spokane that have to be maintained and protected in order to sustain that net zero designation. And it's those particular things that we do every day in conserving and recycling and reusing. Technology advances that we see in home building with lights and water control, sewer control.
Okay, thank you. Your time is up. I know
Thank
lots
you.
we can talk about on this issue. All right, so I want to go to a short answer because we're almost down to our closing statements. So what policies would you support to ensure Spokane is welcoming and supportive to all in its diverse populations? And we'll start with Ms. Wendle, and this will be 60 seconds.
I do agree that this city, has a history of being one of the most welcoming and generous cities that I've ever even read about, not even been to. We need to continue to recognize what we already have as policies on the books to make sure that we're following them and that we're educating our businesses, that we're educating our nonprofits and all of our stakeholders that they are following those policies. I believe really from a fundamental issue is trust. Instead of creating more and more policies, I believe we need to foster an environment of trust. And when things aren't working the way we want them, we communicate. We listen, we ask them questions, and we educate along the way. But I truly believe that the city has been on a path of wonderful acceptance and that we will continue on that path.
Thank you. Mr. Biggs.
Yeah, I'm really happy in the last few years we've really committed ourselves to being a welcoming city for all people. About a year and a half ago, I helped rewrite the Civil Rights Ordinance, and we made it apply to all housing, all employment. We gave protections for people based on income, and we gave a new status. Spokane has a lot of refugees. We resettle refugees very successfully and assimilate them, and we gave protection for them as well. The other thing that we did, and I helped lead the charge, is set aside money for an Office of Civil Rights so that people could complain and refer complaints to the right agencies and investigate the ones those agencies wouldn't. But so far, that position has not been hired. So if I'm City Council President, I will make sure that that position gets hired and is serving the citizens. But the most important thing I'm proud of is the work we've done with the police. And when I started working on police issues before I was in City Council, only 55% of people trusted their police. And we've worked with the Department of Justice. I've worked with the police department. They have changed their complete approach. And now 85% of the people trust them. We're not done yet, but we're on the right track.
Thank you. Mr. Fagan.
Well, in my opinion, ladies and gentlemen, we've done a wonderful job of making the city of Spokane very welcoming. My primary concern here, though, does rest on the fact that over the last 5 years, we have been more agenda-driven than we have priority-driven. And because we haven't been concentrating on these priorities, we have, in essence, inflicted more pain on those that we serve. Initially, the council president is going to need to hit the ground running, and even hitting the ground running, an experienced council member is going to have to, the process is going to take a short while, and it's not like you're flipping a switch and turning on a light and everything is fine. Again, folks, experience counts. You're going to have to hit the floor running. If you don't have the experience, you don't have the relationship set up and ready to go, you haven't looked at funding mechanisms and the budget, and you don't understand those things, you're going to fail big time, and it's going to cause a couple more years delay.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Tyler.
Thank you. My opponent's statement on experience is why we need to work on being a more welcoming city. To use the term experience for new candidates that are running for office is colloquialism for privilege. You have a black male and a female sitting here, and 2 white males opposing us. To use the term that we may not have experience to bring to this council is simply what that is. That's not welcoming. As a former president of the NAACP, I know what a welcoming city looks like. I've worked with various cultures, various communities. My predecessor, my mentor, Naima Quarles Burnley, helped develop the 2016 Gender and Race Equity Study for this council, and 2 of my opponents sat on the council during that time. And part of those recommendations were to make sure we are bringing in diverse applicants for our boards, our commissions, and to then publish those publicly on an annual basis. That has not been done since that occurred. What else can we do? We can elect diverse candidates. That shows that we are inviting community. That's where we start. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now we will go to your closing statements. You each have 1 minute, and we'll start with Mr. Beggs.
Thanks again to the League and everyone who's made this possible today. I'm leading for what matters most to Spokane. People want to be safe in their homes, in their neighborhoods, downtown. And for more than 27 years, I've been a lawyer keeping clients safe in the community from dangerous people and dangerous conditions. And for several years on the council, I've helped reduce crime, improve our police department, rebuilt our roads and sidewalks at record pace. And now I'm tackling homelessness and housing affordability. My deep knowledge of our budget and our city procedures will enable me to get the job done of council president on day 1. And unlike any other candidate, I have proven over time that I have the ability and the talent to bring all sides together to solve our biggest problems. We're in play in Spokane. It's going to be a great tomorrow, and together we can be the most livable city in the Northwest. And if you want to join that vision, please visit electbeggs.com and vote for Breean Beggs for City of Spokane Council President.
Thank you. Mr. Fagan.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, let me go ahead and address the fact that we've got candidates sitting up here on this dais that don't know who it is that they're talking about. And the reason why I say that is because here we are talking about this thing, white privilege. I am being misidentified here. I am more Japanese than I am anything else. I have been the only diversity on the Spokane City Council for the last 7 years. Now that that's been said, ladies and gentlemen, I have been on the council for the last 7 years, coming to your homes, your business, fighting for the little guy, speaking up when other council members did not. I've stood for the business owners and the building owners downtown, consistently voting to make sure that these folks down there are secure in what it is that they're doing and where they're living. As the city council president, we can't instruct other city council members, but we can strongly encourage. I know the city council members that are currently serving here, and I can definitely work with them.
Thank you. Mr. Tyler.
Thank you. As both a community advocate and a leader, I've looked into the eyes of those I've assisted, and I've listened to their needs. Today, I look into your eyes, and I promise you this: your needs, not agendas, will be my primary focus as your council president. Your concerns will always have an empathetic ear. My father, may he rest in peace, taught us that all politics are local, and we should stay engaged, informed, and active in them. So let's all stay engaged. Let's all be informed. Let's all be active. So when you make that change on City Council this August and then this November, we will be in a place where we can temper those issues that will come to us as a community and we'll have to work through together. I ask for your vote. I need you to help me help you with those day-to-day activities that affect your lives, your families, your quality of life. I humbly ask for your vote this August so we can set a new course for your City Council, one that is positively Spokane. Thank you, and join me.
Thank you. Ms. Wendle.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I'm learning a lot just even sitting up here and listening. I appreciate it. But I'm really going to speak from my heart why I'm here. And I believe that experience is a word that is thrown around quite a bit. Whether or not you have experience or don't seems to matter to some. But let me tell you, it's not about, quote, experience, it's the right experience. And it's the right experience at the right time for the right race. We have a council that has done some great things for Spokane, but they've taken their eye off the ball. There are things that we need to fix. And when you look at things that need fixing that have been brewing for a while, you need a fresh perspective. You need someone that's going to bring in experience that has run a business, that has sat on boards, that has run committees, and that has been a parent that is very passionate about the type of community that we want for our children and our grandchildren. Thank you. I'm Cindy Wendle, and I ask for your vote.
And thank you. Again, our candidates for City of Spokane Council President are Breean, Mike Fagan, Phillip Tyler, and Cindy Wendle. Please give them a round of applause for their dedication here. This concludes our primary election candidate forum for candidates running for President of City Council. And in case you joined us after the program broadcast began, here's a reminder about voting in the primary. You must be registered to vote. You can register online up till July 29th. Any mail-in or paper forms must be in the elections office by that date. Then there is new this year, the same-day voter registration. During the 8 days prior to the election day, there will be 2 places where you may register in person: the county elections office in Center Place in Spokane Valley. The hours are Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4, and then on election day, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then when you register, you will be provided a ballot for voting. Registered voters will receive their mail-in ballots about 3 weeks prior to the election day. Ballots must be postmarked or deposited in conveniently located boxes throughout the county. You can get more information on voter service sites and ballot box sites by going to the Spokane County Elections Office, spokanecounty.org/elections. Contact information for candidates as well as voter guides can also be found on that Spokane County site. Additional information about the candidates can be found on the League of Women Voters online voter guide, vote411.org. The League of Women Voters of Spokane is a nonpartisan political organization encouraging informed and active participation in government, influencing public policy through education and advocacy. We invite you to visit our website, lwvspokane.org. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Spokane area, thank you to all of the candidates for their participation in this forum, and thank you to our viewing audience for your willingness to learn more about the candidates and their issues. We hope that this forum has helped you in making an informed decision when you cast your ballot by Tuesday, August 6th, 2019. Thank you for joining us.